as the 2025 General Assembly commenced in February, and a fire hose of anti-zoning bills flooded the agenda. As months passed, these bills proceeded through the sausage-making process. Month after month, CT169Strong has kept nutmeggers abreast of these bills through a variety of communications channels, including timely and topical webinars. On May 26, 2025, followers were brought up to date on the latest 92-page omnibus anti-zoning housing bill that amended a 2-page dummy bill in a last-ditch effort to short-circuit the legislative process. Moderated by CT169Strong leader Alexis Harrison, who also serves on Fairfield, Connecticut's Planning and Zoning Commission. She is joined by CT169Strong co-founders Maria Weingarten and Catherine Braun. Maria serves on New Canaan's Board of Finance and Affordable Housing Committee. Catherine is an environmental attorney who serves on the Fairfield Planning and Zoning Commission. They are joined by Matt Mandel, a guest panelist, who also serves as Executive Director of the Westport Chamber of Commerce and on Westport's representative town meeting as an elected member. Here is that webinar.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Alexis Harrison. I am part of CT169 Strong, the only all-volunteer grassroots organization in Connecticut to help defend local zoning rights. So it's been a very busy session. It's been a very busy last 4 or 5 days. Just to give you a recap of where we are. So last Thursday, before the weekend, Thursday expected to be a featured debate on a big omnibus package of housing and zoning mandates, essentially. But just due to staunch opposition from residents, from all of you, Republicans and Democrats, they kind of helped shift the course. So now it's scheduled for Tuesday, and there have been some revisions to the 92-page bill that was dropped just hours before it was going to be voted on Thursday. So at a high level, it's going to reel back parking minimums in our towns. It requires high-density housing mandates, top-down affordable housing quotas, more increased bureaucracy, and really stripping people like you and me of the power to enact local zoning changes in our towns. So this, we feel this bill was kind of crafted behind closed doors and really circumventing very important public voices. In fact, many people across the state are talking about it. Danielle Dobin, a former P&Z chairman in Westport, she has blasted the bill, calling it a sweeping aircraft carrier of legislation that would instantly rezone 400 commercial lots in Westport, her town, to allow 9-unit housing developments with absolutely no public hearing and no off-street parking. This would really, create chaos in our towns. So tonight we want to talk about the bill, what is expected to happen tomorrow, Tuesday, in our State House. So we have Maria Weingarten tonight, co-founder of CT169 Strong. We have Matt Mandel, who's a member of the RTM in Westport, and Catherine Braun, an environmental attorney and my fellow P&Z commissioner in Fairfield. Happy to have all of you tonight on a Memorial Day. And before we start, I just do want to acknowledge it is Memorial Day, so I want to remember all the fallen soldiers, men and women who served our country to fight for our freedom. We are indebted to your greatest act of sacrifice. All right, Maria, I'm going to put you on the spot, and it's been a very busy weekend, I know, for you. So tell us where we are at the highest level.
Okay, so we know that there was a proposed amendment filed by the Democrats, and it was HB, hold on one second, here it is, LCO 8974. And that's the number they give to amendments. There's an LCO number on any amendment that's filed. And this was an amendment that was filed on HB 5002, which we all know was just a dummy bill that didn't really have a lot of detail in it. So when that dropped on Wednesday, it had about, it was 92 pages long, a lot of different concepts thrown in there, a lot of conflicting concepts. And it seems to those of us who were sort of looking from the sidelines, we weren't in there, so we're sort of have a little bit of a conjecture here, but it seems like when legislators finally had a chance to see what was actually in the language, there was some pushback, whether it was Democrat, Republican. I think everyone said, wait, hold on, this isn't quite what we had been talking about would be in this bill. So we know now that there are some changes that have dropped since then. Today, we found
Yeah, can you
LCO.
talk about some of those changes, like just at a high level, what those changes are
Sure.
and really what the bill is?
Right. So this bill is a massive bill on housing, homelessness. It throws in so many unrelated concepts. The fair share concept is in there, and it requires
What is that?
fair share is it's a decision. There was a study that was done, and it states that there's the need for housing, and that the need is 120,000 units, based on the fact that people are housing burdened, and that's a census data figure based on if you're spending more than 30% of your income on your housing cost, which also includes energy cost, includes your insurance and your property taxes. So if they're overburdened, the assumption they make is that all those people who are cost burdened deserve a new house, actually a new
So just to
apartment.
put in a few words, it's basically a housing quota for every town. So I live in Fairfield, and based on the formula I saw, that could require us to build like 2,000 more units, I think.
Or more.
So
Yes.
basically, yeah, or more. So it's a big quota for every town or city to build more housing, whether you need it or not, just for the record.
Right. And whether you can support it or not, whether you've got developable land, whether you have sewer or water. These are numbers that were not decided on any of those factors. So that's the one bill that's in there. Another bill that's in there is the transit-oriented communities. The desegregated Connecticut bill is in there as well, which again, as a reminder, that's a bill that would take away, if you decide not to opt in, it takes away funding opportunities from your municipality, for a lot of things that you normally might need, things like steep grants, even for small towns where, we had heard discussion from some of the legislators talking about small towns where they can't get their bridge fixed unless they get funding from the state to do so. And they have to shore up their bridge until the funding comes through. So these are real concerns for towns, the steep grants, the urban acts. There's a number of different grants that are in there that are locked up now, even environmental grants that were not meant for expansion of development, but rather where an area might have been overdeveloped just over time and their septics are failing there, or it's really impacting the water table and the water in the area. So those are the areas that they normally would put on sewer just to protect the local neighborhood and protect the wells and all of that. And now this money is going to be instead diverted to expansion of housing.
I
So
just
these
want
are
to stop you there real quick, Maria. So obviously an assault on local zoning, but what about, I also want to just touch on parking, because parking has been a sticking point that we really haven't seen in other bills in previous years. So talk about that real quick.
Sure. So there is a mandate that's come in, and it's a top-down state mandate saying that there should be no minimum parking required anywhere on any residential development that's under 24 units. This can be absolutely devastating in our smaller towns where where you have narrow roads, where that really becomes an issue when you have to force parking onto the street, when you might have sightline concerns, where you're trying to encourage more people to do biking or have on sidewalks or whatever. And if you're now pushing all of these cars on the street, you may be limiting the ability to create sidewalks, to create a safe place for a biker to be able to go with the traffic. So that's really concerning. But we learned, as you know, Alexis, the two of us have visited Bridgeport, because this is not only an issue for small towns, it's definitely an issue for cities as well. And so Bridgeport had this policy adopted locally back in 2021 during COVID. And so they've been living with it for a number of years now. And 17 of their 19 city council came out and sent a letter to Rojas and to the other legislative leadership saying, we don't want this policy statewide. This has not been working for us. It's a problem. We have developers coming in and putting no parking, no on-site parking, and it's impacting the quality of life. So I'll just say quickly that 9294 now makes a health and safety adjustment in that, saying that, well, if there's a health and safety argument you can make, then you could maybe add a little bit of parking. But again, this is not the way to do this, when we know that even in Bridgeport, a city with its limited infrastructure and limited transit on weekends, on holidays, on evenings, You've got a lot of people in the service industry who work there. So it's a real problem. It's a quality of life issue for residents, and it doesn't matter where you are in the state. This has not been adopted statewide anywhere in the country. Think about that for a minute. Nowhere in the country have they adopted this policy of no parking minimums and not allowed to have a maximum, and nothing for anything under 24 units. You're not allowed to require any parking. And even
Yeah, I just want to pause you there, Maria, because we do have a lot to get to.
yeah.
But
And
obviously
I'll just add
parking.
one thing. Senator Duff said that this is essentially it's municipalities and residents subsidizing parking for developers. And so we totally agree with that. And so that's not a good idea.
Yeah, and we do live, whether you like it or not, we do live in a society where we need cars. We don't have that end-to-end transportation. So Matt Mandel, I want to turn to you. Obviously, you're on the RTM for many years in Westport. You talk to a lot of people. So what are your thoughts on all this?
I think my largest issue is that the state a few years ago said that we needed to do certain steps to create affordable housing. And they started with 830 means that we needed to create affordable housing plans and each of the housing plans. And we did. And part of that, with what did we create an affordable housing fund so that we could raise money to create affordable housing. While I was in this period of time, I worked on the state sub affordable housing for futures and development, where we worked for about a year creating a for municipalities on how to create affordable housing, different aspects of it. What are the issues? What aren't the issues? How do we go about doing it? And now here we have this gigantic bill. It's basically saying that all the work that you've done, all the investment of time and effort and belief in what the state was telling us to do doesn't mean anything any longer. That the effort they've taken is gone. And they're saying, okay, it didn't happen fast enough, or whatever their reason is, and they want to now tell us how to do it when we've taken the time and effort to do it. And that, for me, bothers me. I'm a true believer. I've spent a lot of time and effort, and now I'm looking at saying, okay, now it's 2035. And if you take the mathematics of what it's to build it at 90-10 or 20-80, or as an 830G is 30-70, this could mean thousands of more units than that. And so we've got a town of now 10,000, 10,500 units will probably be something like 15,000 units. How does a small town, or any town, not Westport, or Canaan, or Darien, or in West or Fifth County, anyone outside of it, how can they be able to do that if you don't have the finances or the infrastructure able to do it, or the land? And that's one thing in this new piece that just came out.
Matt, I can't hear you, unfortunately.
Each town is supposed to now, by January 1, saying, you're losing me. Oh, that's a problem.
It's okay.
Maybe
So my internet is not strong enough at the moment.
Okay,
maybe
no problem.
turn off your video and just try talking without the video, possibly.
Yeah. That might be a bit easier.
Get the video off. Let's see
Yeah.
if we can do that. Is that helpful? Can
Yep,
you hear me
better.
fine now?
It's a little better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, you don't have to see me. You just have to hear what I have to say. That's what's important.
I agree.
So where was I when I was? Where was I when I was talking about?
How many more units that we need to build?
Well, the point. Sure. I mean, the whole concept of fair share, which, by the way, in New Jersey is a complete failure. And I don't understand why the state would be looking at something that another state is having problems with. At least 10 towns in New Jersey are the state saying that we don't want this, that it's not going to work. We can't get there no matter what. And yet our state wants to move forward with it. It doesn't make any sense. So how are we supposed to do that? And then where I was talking about, now we have to give a report to the round table of the leader of the House at January 1, saying, what land do we have to be able to be used? Well, maybe we're preserving some of that for schools. Maybe we want some of that for open space. Maybe we want some of that for a new fire and police station that might be better served in a different location rather than doing something else. How are we supposed to know? Say, here's the land that we have. And then they're going to come down and say, oh, no, you're going to have, but I'm sure you have more questions. Catherine, you're up next.
I will, yeah, I will turn
I'll
to
talk
Catherine.
about, the as of right conversion. Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
All right, Catherine, you're the environmental person on the panel, and that's something that's important, I think, to all of us on this call. Tell us how these concepts in the bill, fair share, that would mandate every town and city to add, thousands more of units and, so much more concepts. Tell us how this will impact the environment.
Well, I think the emphasis on development at all costs, first of all, for somebody to mention later is, I don't agree with the number. They're saying the state has to build 125,000 units of affordable. That has not been justified economically or statistically to me. I've heard the numbers like 35,000. It makes a big difference. But aside from that, when you have what they need to impose on our towns in order to get to that huge number, Fairfield, for example, would have to build around 2,000 affordable. If we leave it to developers using our zoning rules, between 10 and 20% of what they build would be affordable, which means they'd have to build 13,000 housing units to get 2,000. That's my math. I hope it's right. But we have 22,000 housing units now. So that increases our housing stock by 60% in what, 10 years? It's absolutely ridiculous. And to get there, you have to pass regulations that will enable that to happen. We have enough trouble passing our own regulations now. We just passed a bunch of regulations, which I believe will put multifamily development on steroids more than I felt we should have done. This would make it much worse than that. And when you do that, you're deprioritizing open space, you're deprioritizing our ability to have wider buffers around inland or tidal wetlands in the future because it'll all be paved over. You can't create them where you've already paved it over. And we're a coastal community. Anywhere on the coast, you're going to have a big problem with sea level rise, with climate change, with flooding. We already have a problem with a huge amount of development being directed in the coastal area. Our town just approved a massive development where construction activity is within 15 feet of a tidal wetland. That is not acceptable. Tidal wetlands need 100 feet in order to migrate landward because they will literally drown as the sea level rises. And when that happens, we lose all the ecological services they provide, which includes flood control on a natural, nature-based solution way of doing it. That's what you want. It's like a sponge, okay? It provides habitat for a lot of endangered and threatened species. It provides many, many benefits, carbon absorption. So we want to be protecting more of our open space, not less. Also open space that's not in a tidal wetland or an inland wetland. We might need it for a variety of reasons. It provides carbon absorption, wildlife habitat. It also helps cleanse the water that ends up in our reservoirs. So there's a whole host of reasons why, just from an environmental perspective alone, we should not be deprioritizing open space preservation and also, by the way, historic preservation, because once it's gone forever. And that's what
Catherine, I just do want to stop you right there. We've seen a few environmental groups kind of commingle their missions, and they've been in favor of some of these bills that really create a lot of development, which seems contrary to what they believe in. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think if you have an environmental group that focuses on open space and conservation, that's your mission. And you can write a letter supporting aspects of certain bills, but you have to be very careful not to have a development mission, even if it's for a good cause like affordable housing. These bills are not necessarily only about affordable housing anyway. But what they do is when you have such a pro-development stance at the expense of open space preservation or a zoning commission being able to hold a hearing, okay, and take evidence from neighbors about flooding conditions or stormwater issues. You're not allowing site-specific, project-specific review with a lot of these bills. You're allowing as-of-right development. So the nonprofits that I have donated to my whole life, some of them I don't donate to anymore because I feel that they are confusing their mission. You're either for conservation and environmental protection or you're for development. And again, if you're going to piecemeal it and write a letter, make sure you understand the bill first, because the devil is in the details. A lot of these bills will be very, very harmful to the environment.
Thank you.
Can I I just add real quick, so when we were talking about the fair share numbers and all of that, Westcog and actually not Westcog, CCM and Rivercog did a report, and I've linked that to you, Alexis, if you could share that with the entire audience so they could see that report. That was shared as well with all of the legislators so that they could understand what's in this bill and why it doesn't work. And so I think I really encourage everyone to take a look at that. It's a slideshow presentation, top level, and it really does help understand, because I think what's really unfortunate here is that this has not been a transparent process. When you think about this fair share study, it was supposed to be a open process that, and they literally have, tried to have secret committees on this study. They've had meetings with the COG, meetings that should have been open to the public, and where everybody could have heard what this study, the Eco Northwest had come up with, and some of their
Can you
situation
just
that.
clarify what the COG is and what Eco Northwest is? Because some people may not be familiar with all that.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm in this too deep, but yeah, so Eco Northwest was the consultant hired out of Oregon to help create the fair share study for Connecticut. And Connecticut has COGS is divided into COGS, councils of government. And so since we do not have regional government in Connecticut, a COG is just a amalgamation of a number of different groupings of different municipalities, so that they can regionally address issues that make more sense, and in sometimes find ways to get funding for projects from federal level where they mostly deal with regional governments, and it lets us compete for those grants as well. So they do a lot of really good research and work on these things, and so that's a really good study that I hope everybody will take, or I should say presentation, that was done by CCM, which is the Connecticut Council of Municipalities. It represents 168 of our 169 towns and cities. And so I hope everybody will take a look at those that information, and as well, I've also linked the allocation of the fair shares, so everybody knows what that is as well.
Thank you. Now, Matt, I know that you wanted to talk about as of right, because
I just wanted to follow up with on Maria, what she was saying, and Catherine. With Catherine, in terms of the environmental, all the TOD stuff that they want to do, when you're talking about the Metro North line, are areas where global warming, sea rise.
You got to turn off your video again, I think. I want to hear this. I can't hear it. It's breaking up.
You're having trouble hearing me?
Yeah, we can't hear you.
It worked better when the video was off.
Can you hear me okay?
No,
It's breaking.
I would turn the video
Yeah,
off. It's cutting out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
this is very important. I know what you're talking
all right.
about.
So okay, so I'll keep it off.
That's
I'll keep
better.
it off. Fine. Hey, look, technology is only as good as what you got. So
Okay, no
essentially,
problem.
the idea with the TODs, they're putting a lot of effort into developing along, let's say you can hear me?
Yep.
You can hear me or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea here is to put TOD stuff. So the lyric ride stuff is riding along in this large bill where other things that are being combated and people are missing the point on the TOD. Are they supposed to be along Metro North line where, as Catherine, of sea rise? Well, if you look at the effects of can you get to or not get to Westport's train station 20 years from now, you may not be able to. So is this the right place or the wrong place to be putting stuff? And when we're thinking about the future for the next 100 years. So that's just there. But when we're talking about what Maria's saying, you have the CCM, you have the Council of Small Towns, you have the West Coast, you have the Fairfield County P&Z people all saying, wait a second, you want to do this and this and this all at the same time? And the question is it or isn't it going to work? So let's take an example. One of the pieces that's in here is an as-of-right conversion for commercial properties to residential. Okay, I understand that. And in Westport, we've actually approved a couple of these, but we're watching. See, it can't or nothing do it. what happens when you've moved all these people in? So let's say there's fair share that's occurring of it, moving people into the towns, but now used up most of the commercial
Matt, I'm afraid that you're cutting out and we can't hear you very well. So you may want to call in. We can't hear you. So I'm just going to move to
where
Mary.
they work.
Yeah, Matt,
The
we can't hear
whole
you. You're breaking up.
goal
So,
is to have people figure out a new location.
okay. All right.
I know what Matt is, a little bit of what Matt is saying, he has said before. Can I just fill in the gap
Yeah,
a
of
little bit
course.
and
Yeah.
say, so we're pushing population into the inundation area, and there's only so much you can do. I mean, do we want to surround the coast with a 30-foot seawall? I mean, why are we putting such a great concentration of people down there? In Fairfield, when you look at the DEP and the Yukon projections, our sea level will rise 20 inches in the next 25 years. There are parts of Metro North that will be inundated underwater with not even the worst flood events, so why are we adding so much population to these coastal areas? It's a big problem because Connecticut is way behind from some other states in terms of even trying to buy back or I would call it de-develop certain areas to make them more natural and able to absorb floodwaters, as opposed to adding development. We keep adding development to the coastal area at our own peril.
And
Right.
I would just add, and I know Matt's coming back, but I think what the point he was making as a member of the Board of Finance is something I think about a lot, is what is our mix of commercial income versus residential income, and recognizing that commercial puts less impact on your municipality, requires less services in general from your towns. So when you lose that ability to create income, and we know that we're in a flux now post-COVID, there's some more remote work opportunity. Things have changed. We know that things have changed. But the question is, will they always be this way? And once you've taken away this opportunity for commercial land and to have that opportunity to have a vibrant economic engine in your community, how do you get that back when you've created bedroom communities everywhere in the state? So these are serious concerns, and these are things that should be managed on a local basis as well. And we're not saying that it's that there should be no conversions of commercial. Absolutely. As Matt said, there are towns who are already working on this to make this happen. So there are good opportunities to do this, but we need to be cautious about how we do these things, and we need to be strategic. And I think that trying to throw all of this against the wall and just it's literally it's handouts to developers to just do whatever they want, and again, certain areas may not be optimal that are commercial or may
Maria, I'm
not.
just going to pause you right now because we do have a question from one of our audience members, Mary Holleran, one of our Fairfield constituents. Happy to have you on, Mary. Let me unmute you.
I just want to ask what we're supposed to do about this, because of course my neighborhood, of course, as you know, is going to be decimated pretty soon, despite the fact that our neighbors are all coming together and trying to appeal these terrible things that are going on. What do we need to do right now to fix this or help this?
Thank you, Mary. Who wants to take that?
Well, I mean, I think we just have to keep calling. At this point, I mean, we know there's a super majority. We know that they're counting votes. And so, it's sort of kind of gaming what is the most onerous thing that we can get to pass, and that can be passed while still keeping that list of that voter group together. So I think it is critical that everybody contact every one of their legislators and let them know what concerns they have with these bills. We've outlined what's in 5002. It's in that chat. You can take a look at it. And we have also provided information in our email blast, where we give you the phone numbers and links to how to find your legislator. We have a quick petition on our website, CT169Strong.org. We encourage you to send that. It's also going to Governor Lamont. So we want to make sure that everyone knows. The more people who know what's happening, the more it gives pause to some of the people who are the staunchest advocates for passing these sweeping bills.
All right, can you hear me now and see me?
Yes,
Yeah,
much better.
Okay, moving the laptop closer to the Wi-Fi sometimes works.
it does. No
So
worries.
where I was, we're talking about the as of right conversion of commercial. And it's not just that you don't get it back, it's the contradictions between the bill and itself, where you have two pieces doing one thing and another one doing another, and that 3 4 years from now you don't realize that they would actually conflict with each other and create a problem. And how are legislators who really aren't up on zoning or really don't understand what the impacts are, whether zoning wise, legally, or economically, are going to make a decision on this without really looking at it? So let's say we take 10 15 properties and we change them over to residential, but now there's no longer are people able to work there. So now they're living there. We're bringing more people living there. And instead of being able to work close to where they are, they're going to have to get into a car and go on the highway. But the point is now there's no parking standard for cars because people need to go. So there's a basic contradiction in the different ideas that they were trying to put together in this one bill, where essentially what needs to be done is each piece needs to be pulled out and looked at individually and say, what is it? What does it do? And what are its consequences in the future? Rather than saying, hey, we're just going to throw all of these together and have us all vote on them. I'd say that it's not a proper process to get through it, because some of these things are probably good ideas somewhere along the line, but they need to be addressed properly and understand it. And the amendment that's occurred where they're talking about the parking, they threw a bone and said, okay, there has to be a site plan, but in the end, you can only give 110% of what the developer has said they need to do parking. Now, what developer is really going to build as much parking as they're supposed to do when it's financially beneficial for them not to? And as we saw in Bridgeport, where 17 out of 19 of the Democratic members of the council came forward and said, hey, don't do this. It did not work in Bridgeport. Why is that in the bill? So you go on and start looking at each one individually, and you can pick it apart. The problem is they're voting on it tomorrow. So
Right.
how are we supposed to do it? You might pick one and you might pick another, but there are 8 or 9 of them and 7 of them get through. It's the Merv effect. You know, you send a giant bomb and then it spreads out. You can only knock down a few of them and the rest get through. But are they good, bad, or indifferent? We're not really sure because we haven't had enough time to research it and understand how to deal with it.
Yeah, I just want to bring to, I know that I've seen some questions. So this omnibus bill, this massive bill, is going to be voted on likely tomorrow, Tuesday. So I just want to clarify that no one has voted on it yet unless you were in a committee, either the Housing or Planning and Development Committee. So, but there are a number of very onerous concepts in here that have been all, placed together in what they call an aircraft carrier bill, from getting rid of minimum requirement of parking, this allocation of fair share that would put, really Fairfield County is the bullseye, but every town around in Connecticut would be required to build a number of affordable housing units in addition to 830G. So I do want to add that question because about 830G, why hasn't it been revised, reformed, whatever, to make it workable? Because that's a question I know many people have in our audience.
That's a good question. I think it just depends on who, the leadership who are writing these bills, who are writing these bills are talking to. Now, and you have to ask yourself, what are their interests? Are they self-motivated? Are they in the pockets of developers? Are they, like who are they listening to? And we know that the developer advocates, the OCAs, they were pushing fair share because they really want a scheme so that they could sue towns when they're unable to meet their onerous allocations of fair share.
So towns can be sued if they don't meet their quote unquote fair share.
That was the origination of that bill. Now, OCA has been like, that ability to sue is not in the bill right now. But that doesn't mean that if, a year or two down the road, that all of a sudden that doesn't pop up again, because it's going to be, we know these are onerous, and it's again, in the fair share, there's no requirement that the town has to build it. It just says you have to rezone for a reasonable opportunity for a developer to build it. But there's so many things that go into why or where a developer decides to build what they do, that, it's blaming a town for something that developers and the market hasn't decided to do. And so there could be some real issues in different parts of the state, or as a result, areas that maybe have less access to jobs or less access to transit, you might have more issues there and in some of this development. And again, it's like what's a reasonable number? It's such a vague, term to use that it's just ripe for lawsuits down the road. But again, not this year. But, we know that this was in the bill originally, and I guess to make it less controversial, I bet it was taken out, but, things always seem to pop back up again. So that's the expectation.
So folks in the audience, they're asking, what do we do immediately? They're worried, they're fearful of what's going to happen to their neighborhood. All of our towns are composed of neighborhoods. So use our quick petition. I put it in the chat. It will bring you to contacting your legislator as well as Governor Lamont and urging them not to vote on these concepts. That's what you have to do today.
Also,
That's the most important.
yeah.
Well, you
Sorry.
can make phone calls too. I mean, you can get to their
Absolutely.
offices and you can tell
Yeah.
them personally. It's not just, a letter's too late. It's not going to get there in the mail. An email might get there, but a phone call also helps out. And in terms of legal aspect, just a quick on 830G, there are modifications to 830G or 830G in this one. It's if a town is found to be delaying on purpose or doing something that shouldn't be done, they have to pay the legal fees for the developers. So there are not modifications to 830G to make it more palatable. There are modifications in 830G to make it that much more onerous. And towns are going to be looking at it because 830G has been a failure essentially throughout the state. On average, it's basically one affordable unit per year per town has been created through 830G. And yet it wreaks havoc on many towns because you've got developers coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to build this that's completely out of scope and form for what's there. And there it is. And they get 70% market rate and 30% affordable. And it really doesn't move the needle that much further towards this 10%. Now, if you look at what the bill is talking about, it's 20%. And that's even scarier than the 10%. So 830G is really a drop in the bucket compared to fair share, when they're saying you need 20% of your girth to be affordable, which is almost impossible because to get there, either on a 90-10, 20, 80-20 or 70-30, we're talking thousands upon thousands of units. So 830G is no longer the problem. Fair share is really the problem. And how do we deal with this when they're saying that you need to meet 25% of it within the next 10 years?
And I just want to add something about representation. I was on the RTM for 3 terms, which is a legislative body in our town. It's like the town council. You represent your constituents geographically. I think every single state representative should be answering to their constituents. They should be holding town hall meetings about this bill before they even consider thinking about passing it. And I don't know how many have, but I can bet that most people in most towns do not like any aspect of this bill. They do not want to have the state take over and preempt their local elected and accountable and knowledgeable zoning officials from their ability to make land use decisions, which are permanent and have high impact. So I kind of doubt that there's been a lot of outreach to the local constituents, but every single person should expect their state representative to represent them, not anything else. There should be no other quid pro quo or, oh, it's messy in Hartford and I'll get this if you do that. No. This is going to permanently affect your town, the budget, the capital budget, the infrastructure, your open space, your environmental health, your coastal areas, everything, school, redistricting, everything. This cannot be allowed to go. So I would say every person needs to make phone calls and sign the petition. Also forward that information to everyone you know across Connecticut. This is kind of an emergency, much more than the housing crisis is an emergency. Because again, that number, that 129,000 number, whatever it is, I don't think it's real. I think it's more like 30 or 40,000. No one's proven to me that it's
I do want to bring it back to the local towns. I know Catherine, I know Maria, I know Matt, especially in recent years. We all of our towns, I think, have done a great deal to create a diversity of housing, whether it's for seniors, whether it's for younger folks. So talk to me. Is that recognized? Because I feel like it's always this tug of war between the towns and the cities, the towns and Hartford, like we're not doing enough. And quite frankly, I'm on the zoning commission. We have approved a lot of text changes to our regulations to allow more density, more than I would probably prefer. But the reality is we're doing a lot of the hard work. We've recognized this for many years that we do need diversity of housing for a variety of reasons. Yeah, that seems to go on deaf ears in Hartford. Can someone
Right, that's what I was alluding to in the beginning,
Mhm.
was the idea that the state had told us, here's what you need to be doing. You need to be creating the 830J
Right.
and your affordable housing plan, and then executing the affordable housing plan. And there are towns that are doing it. New Canaan is building a whole bunch of stuff on their own. And Westport has the largest inclusionary zoning at 20%. So we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, which was what the state laid down 2-3 years ago for us. And we're getting there and trying to do it. The idea of pulling the rug out from under that really is problematic, because we are trying to do what we're doing. And now the state coming in and saying, well, now you need to do 10 times as much in a shorter period of time is almost an impossibility.
Do we even have the, I mean, I think I remember someone else saying this a few years ago when Fair Share first came as a concept, like we may not even have enough tradesmen in Connecticut to create all this housing.
We
may
don't.
not have access, right?
We
How are
don't.
you create thousands and thousands of units in a matter of, a decade? I just don't see it happening.
And again, because there's a multiplier effect, and this latest version that just came out, popped today, said, okay, well, you only have to do 25% of your fair share. So if your fair share is 2,000, you only have to do 500 of affordable units in 10 years. That's hard enough just by itself. But if you do, as Matt was talking about, that 90-10, where you're just have to set it up so a developer will build it. Most developers won't build it unless it's like 10% is at the affordable units and 90% is market value. I mean, Westport has a 20% inclusionary policy. So even at 80-20, it's still a huge amount of development. It's a ton of thousands and thousands of units of housing that's expected to happen. And the question is, who are we building all these units for? Because that's not where the population's going. That's not where the household size is going. It makes no sense. And again, the real number, and even in the study, it came out that the real need is around 30,000 or so statewide, not 120,000. So, it's still crazy that, and again, we're not doing the allocations based on where it makes sense. And so we're essentially eliminating cities from the discussion, where you would rather see investment in the cities and you have the infrastructure there and you want to make sure that good development happens that revitalizes the cities, that we're all interconnected. We all visit our nearby cities all the time. So we all need to work together and come up with better solutions. But this behemoth bill is not it.
It's funny, when we look at Westport, let's say, with 10,000 units, and we were at about 3% affordable, that means we needed 700 units to fulfill the 10% to 830G. And now when you're talking about it, that we would need to do 500 units in 10 years, and that's just 25% of the 75% that would be mandated. It becomes an impossibility. And when people are saying, what can we do? And you should be rightly nervous. I mean, we're bringing forward and explaining what this is. I mean, it's not that we're against affordable housing. It's not against that we're expanding our towns in a reasonable manner. It's that it's just too much too fast to be able to do it. And you should be talking to your legislators and saying, hey, this isn't right. Vote this down at this time. Let's all talk about this and pick apart which pieces may work and which ones don't work. But the idea that someone is going to say, hey, if you make this change in this particular piece, I'm going to accept the other 9 that are in the bill, it doesn't make any sense. And we're all in trouble if that's the case. That if they're picking off particular people because they said, oh, we'll give you this piece and we'll give you that piece, but the other 8 get through entirely, then we've made no headway at all.
Well, it gives legislators cover when they say, well, there were 3 pieces that were really good for my community. It gives them cover, but the other, maybe 12 are really bad. And I just feel like it's just a very bad process from what I've seen. I don't, this is Memorial Day weekend, and we were just given a new revised bill today. How, if you're a legislator, how are you supposed to digest 110 pages by tomorrow when you're supposed to vote on this, when you have probably 5 or 6 other pieces of legislation? That's just not good policy. Maria, I think you wanted to say something.
Oh, I was going to say, I see a message from one of the, it's why all of a sudden are they pushing 830G when it has been on the books since 1990? I think they're not necessarily pushing 830G. What they're trying to do now is one of the points in here was to eliminate the ability to get moratoriums or to limit how you can get a moratorium, it seems like, because that's part of what's in here now is a report, a analysis to look at how what the thresholds are and how they set them. So, and again, there aren't that many who've ever gotten a moratorium. So it seems, kind of like, of course, like you have people who are trying to do the right thing and then they're just going to get punished for doing the right thing and getting to a moratorium, this is just the way this is. And there are plenty of other aspects in bills out there that do the same thing. It's like all of a sudden, that bill again with the developer, where a developer can get their legal fees back if a town loses for 830G. Well, what about when a developer maybe is trying to do outsized development and purposely in an area that's historic or in an area that has wetlands mostly? Like, is that egregious? Should that be maybe the towns, if they lose, shouldn't the towns be reimbursed? I think this should go both ways because again, 830G is onerous. And we just posted something. If you look at our Facebook page, we posted something from AI that talked about that Connecticut's policy with 830G is one of the most, it's an outlier in the rest of the country. It is so egregious. So, it just takes away, it usurps all rights locally. So this bill does even more. It's just on steroids. And so we all need to tell everybody, tell 10 friends, tell your 10 friends to tell another 10 friends. And it has to be across the state. So if you know people in all kinds of parts of the state, in the quiet corners, anywhere else, tell them, because it depends on every one of these legislators knowing what's going on with this legislation and making sure that they know how you feel about it and that you don't want it.
Yeah. And someone is asking this, and I think at this point it may not matter who the who is, but who is pushing all this. I think it's really about fighting bad concepts versus the who. But if anyone wants to take that, they're welcome to.
Can I just intercede a little bit? My
Yeah.
philosophy is land is not partisan. Land use decisions are not and should not be partisan, and legislation affecting land should not be partisan. Unfortunately, there is a supermajority of Democrats. That doesn't bother me at all. I think anyone who's watching this and happens to be a Democrat, Independent, Republican, your representatives, I don't care what party they're in, they need to represent your geographic area. They should be representing you. And if this bill passes, I don't think they're representing you. Okay. Because this is going to have profound sweeping change. Okay. It's basically a state takeover of your local zoning, planning and zoning. That cannot be tolerated. So that's all I want to say about that.
I think you answered the question.
Jack said, is it reasonable for our state government, including our elected representatives, to collaborate with each town's leadership to work on a plan the town creates over the course of 9 to 12 months to determine the unique priorities for each town? This would seem like a better approach. Yes, it would. And this is something that we've been saying all along.
And we've been doing that with our 830J plan, which is basically an affordable housing plan that we're required to do every 5 years, 10 years?
5 years, yeah.
5 years. And Fairfield has been doing that. In fact, Fairfield, I have to say, is a shining example. We were one of the first towns with an affordable housing plan back in the 80s. So it's been a priority for us, and I know for many other towns. So we completely agree with you.
And it is reasonable. And again, this is where it's not necessarily just your legislator. It's we know that Jason Rojas, this is one of his priorities. So he is one of the key architects of this bill. And that's part of the issue here, is that, we need to make sure that everybody knows what's in these bills and gets in touch with all of the legislators to let them know.
And Jason Rojas, he's the majority leader of the House in Hartford, just for clarification. And leadership does, have a lot to say over the priorities of their chamber, just like most bodies do. So that's that. Matt, anything else you want to add?
Well, I just think it's a matter of people getting up and saying something about this. There's nothing wrong with looking for solutions to a problem. And there is a problem with affordable housing. There is. And you talk to people in my community and around the community, we do need to be dealing with it. But the point is, how do we go about dealing with it? And, again, what I was saying was we were set on a path to do it, and we've been trying to work on it. And I think that's what's important. And this piece of legislation is problematic. Now, if it was just fair share, okay, let's take on fair share and talk about it. But it's not just fair share. It's fair share. It's as of right commercial change. It's getting rid of parking standards. It's flip-flopping the burden in 830G in terms of the money. And you name it, it continues and on and on and on. And 92 pages worth. And even now, we get the 13 pages. I came back, I was camping this week, and I came back and found out I got these 13 pages. It's not 13 pages. It's 13 pages that you have to go back and look at the other bill to see what it's referencing, to understand what's there, what's not coming back, what's not going to be there. And in it, it is talking about, oh, it's 8-2-HIB, A, B, C, D, and you have to go look at that. To really understand it takes hours and hours and days to really see what's going on. And now, as I said before, if you add two different pieces together, they may actually conflict with each other. And there's some pieces where it says 25,000, but written it says 15,000. So in their speed to get this out, they're not even correcting themselves to make sure that the language is proper. I mean, when we do things in the RTM, we send it through committee. It goes to the ordinance committee that vets it, the language, to make sure that everything is good and the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. Here, it's basically like, here's what's going on. Tomorrow, we're all going to vote on it. And who knows when the problem really occurs? It could be 5 years from now and saying, wow, we really made a gigantic mistake and there's no way of fixing it. So I think we need to fix it now. We need to split all these pieces apart, debate them out properly, and vote on them independently, not this gigantic aircraft carrier.
Yeah. I would also say too, year after year, I feel like we're in the same position, always having these same conversations about the same concepts. I guess you know what frustrates me is, why can't we just arrive at a collaborative solution to help address the affordable housing issue? Because it does exist. We all know that. So why doesn't that not happen in Connecticut? I feel like we're always doing the same thing over and over again.
Why are we always ignoring 830G? People hate 830G because they've seen it in their towns, and it's scary because the zoning commission has their hands tied. These bills are worse. They don't even have hearings. At least you have a hearing with 830G. So you can have a hearing if you have the money, you can hire an expert, put the evidence in the record, and the commission may or may not go your way, but then you can appeal it. And if you have evidence, maybe it'll be overturned, maybe it won't. It's still hard. I'd say 3/4 of all 830G cases that go to court go against the town, but at least you have a hearing. A lot of these bills, the transit-oriented communities bill, that allows 830G within the 500 what 500 acre radius around a train station. Basically, you can put an 830G there with no public hearing. That's what as of right means. No public hearing, no ability to put on evidence, no ability to file an environmental intervention to raise issues, no ability to do anything. The commission has no discretion. If they check the boxes, it gets approved. And that would allow a significant amount of development in a large swath of your town, and some of the other bills as well. So without allowing a public hearing, it's even worse than 830G.
Well, and a lot of them where they're talking about density, they're not tying it into affordability either. So you have live work ride. If you're building, 1 to 9 units, none of them have to be affordable. Well, if I'm a smart developer, I'm going to build 9, 9, 9, 9, and they're just going to, basically block bust the entire area with now nine units per acre, or 9 units per half an acre, whatever they can do. And again, with the conversion to commercial, it talks about middle housing, but it doesn't say there needs to be any sort of affordability component with it. So there's no inclusionary that's going in it. So now you're going to have these people coming in and saying, hey, I can put in 20 units over here. None have to be affordable. So they're saving money on the affordability. And now all it's doing is increasing the numerator of the town's number, and that you're trying to get to the 20%. So it doesn't work. Are we building for density? Are we building for affordability? So that needs to be worked out. And then again, you go back to live, work, ride. It's not an opt-in. It's you're forced to do it, because if you don't do it, you're deprioritized for getting money. That's really an opt-in, isn't it? So all the nomenclature that's going on here and there saying, oh, this is okay, it's not okay, you really have to parse it down to its words and look at it individually. And that's really the same thing I keep saying is, this is too big, break it up, look at it. Some will make it, some won't make it, but then we at least have a fair shot at talking about it in a collaborative manner.
And I think what's really frustrating too is, in the majority leader had a round table. He still has a round table, and it's part of this bill. And they've had discussions with members of DOH, the Department of Housing, and with CHAFA, which is the Connecticut Housing Financing Authority. And they've said that there are too many conflicting programs, that there are too many different things that they're trying to do. We recently passed MRDA, which is the Municipal Redevelopment Act. And it's just getting off the ground. So why are we not just doubling down on that? Trying to get people more engaged with that as a strategy to help be productive, help towns be more strategic about their planning. No one is against planning. We all think planning is a good idea. So we just need to encourage that instead of creating, now in this one, you're going to have a fair share that has a different requirement for the percentage of housing that has to be a family housing versus a single unit, a studio. And there's all these different requirements that are going to get you tricked up in trying to manage your A30G and manage this and manage that. So it's a problem because you have too many programs. It's too convoluted. We need to take a step back. And again, fair share, it's a horrible methodology. It's not based on anything that makes sense. The one methodology that they didn't consider is the one that the technical experts, the third version, which is alternative 2 or B, is the one that looked at jobs, looked at close proximity to employment and commuting time and things like that. And those are, and how much development you've already had happening in your area. So those are all
Right.
important factors that make sense. Those are sort of logical things, not just based on like 3 wealth factors and whether your percentage of multifamily, which was that's the broken system that OCA came up with that was twice defeated. And that's the version of the bill that's currently
Can you
being.
just describe what OCA is, Maria? Because some people may not know what OCA is.
Sure. Open Communities Alliance is one of these NGOs, nonprofits that was advocating with a whole bunch of different organizations like Desegregate and all these others, talking about housing crisis and the numbers that are needed and all this other stuff. And so, but their version was, let's take New Jersey's plan where they've had this since 1970 and let's adopt that for Connecticut. Now, New Jersey has this, but they've been in constant litigation and they have the highest local property taxes in the entire country. And we are already number 2. So this will quickly, if we adopt this, between all of the costs that to try to like reorganize and to do zoning and all these other things, we're going to quickly become the most expensive and we already are. We're already expensive. We already know our energy costs are too high. We already know all these other things. These are the factors that are impacting residents every day. It's affordability is the issue here. And that's what's really getting a lot of people to not come here, getting a lot of businesses to not come here because we're not as competitive as other areas. And those are things that our legislators should be taking a closer look at and trying to figure out how to strategically do better for our state and so that we can compete with other states and get more people to come here because that's how this happens. It doesn't just happen by creating housing.
Right.
Exactly. It's not just about affordable housing. It's about affordability globally. The energy costs that you have. I mean, they're going to be going up. If we lose all of our commercial retail space because we're turning it into housing, then those prices for what commercial is left is going to go up. That means that everything that's sold from within those places is going to go up as well. And that's going to create an affordability issue as well. Not just affordability in housing, but affordability to be able to live here as people. And so that's something that needs to be looked at. And I don't think they're looking at the future. I think they're saying, hey, how are we going to be able to get some housing in here, affordable or not? And then, they're not sure. They don't know what will the future be. And I think the future is going to be that we're going to be more expensive and less affordable to be here in Connecticut. And that's what Maria was talking about.
Well, think about handling all of the applications. You're going to have to double your town staffing at town hall. We have like 1 or 2 staff that reviews applications for my zoning commission. You're going to have dozens of wetlands apps, dozens of housing apps just to get to that quota. This is basically a quota that would be mandated. It's centralized planning at the state level for your town to impose a quota without regard to your budget, your capital budget, town hall staffing. How are you going to do that? You're going to make our town grow 60% greater over the next 10 years? That's preposterous. My town only adds about 90 or 95 new units of any type of housing, 1 apartment, 1 house in any given year. How are you going to do that? It's almost an impossibility. And there's no consideration for any of that.
Well, you also have to look at schools. If you're bringing in this many families, and that's what they're pushing for, because they said that 50% of it has to be families of all these new buildings and So now you have more schools. Well, with more schools, where are they going to be? If you don't have the physical space for them, now you've got a problem. If you do, you still have to build them. We're about to be building a new elementary school. It's going to cost $100 million. So now we're going to have to build another one.
Right.
And a middle school as well. And then there needs to be fire and police, et cetera. So you're talking about increasing of taxes as the more people come in. Again, it's going to be making it less affordable to live in any one of these communities because of this. So it's the future is not looking good if we adopt what's being put forward tomorrow.
I was just going to say, you know, I think beauty does matter in Connecticut. We have a beautiful state. People came here from New York largely during COVID because they wanted their own space. They wanted grass. You know, we're going to be a state of asphalt soon if this does pass, because everything is going to be an apartment building, whether you're in Westport, Fairfield, or Bridgeport and up the line. So it's very, very troubling. So we're at the top of the hour, and I do want to be cognizant of people's times. Are there any closing remarks each of you want to make, and what people should do? Because that's the big question tonight. What can I do?
I would say contact your legislator. They need to know where you stand on this. You have to make some phone calls, call the governor, call the leadership, because they need to know that this is not going in the right direction. And just so everybody knows the process, it's a House bill, so it would be raised in the House first, then it would have to go to the Senate, and then it would have to be signed by the governor. Now, if the governor decides to veto it, if there's 2/3 of the, we have over 2/3 of the majority, they can override his veto potentially. So that's the process going forward. So we are fighting this all the way. We believe that the truth and the knowledge of what's in the language of the bills is key and critical. And we want all of the legislators to know what's in the bills. And we encourage you to talk about it with them and say that you expect them to vote for your interests, not for towing a party line, and understand that there's a lot of pressure put on them. So there's a lot of pressure. They can lose their leadership roles in positions if they don't vote the way they're told to vote. Sometimes there are certain ones that are given an excuse that they can vote no on something just because they might be in a contested seat or something. So we want everyone to know that you need to put pressure on your legislators and tell them that they have to represent your interests. You're paying attention. You know what's happening right now.
Thanks, Maria. Matt?
Yeah, and clearly this is a bipartisan or a nonpartisan issue. This is about your town, your state, and how you want it to be, and whether or not this is the right way to go forward in solving a problem that does exist. I don't think this is the right way to solve it. I think we've been working on it, and we should be able to continue to work on it. And you should contact your representatives, Democrat, Republican, Independent, green, blue, red, it doesn't matter who it is. It's our town, it's our state, and we should be looking after it in a much better process than the one that we have in front of us.
Yeah. Kathy, I'll give you the last word.
This last minute, adding 13 pages to a 92-page bill on a holiday, on Memorial Day, when we're honoring our fallen soldiers, that is completely outrageous and unacceptable. We have elected our representatives to represent. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Apologies for any technical issues. We're all human. It's the real world. But please go to CT169Strong for details and to sign that quick petition. Go to our Facebook page and Twitter pages for all the latest news and information, and we will be in touch. And I really appreciate the conversation, the great questions, and thanks for your time. We'll talk soon.
Facebook and Twitter, because if it's a last minute change, that's the fastest way we can get in touch with all of you. So follow us on there as well.
And thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate what you do for the state and the research that you've done in getting the word out. And thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Matt.
Here.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
CT169 Strong is an all-volunteer grassroots organization. There is no paid staff, no expensive executives, no fancy offices. 100% of all contributions are used to pay out-of-pocket expenses, like web and email services, advertising and professional lobbying, boots on the ground in Hartford. Without hundreds of supporters, much of what CT169 Strong does would not be possible. Since 2020, CT169Strong has been the unifying voice of Connecticut's 169 towns. Standing against a barrage of anti-zoning proposals from well-funded developer-fueled nonprofits. If CT169Strong had been around in 1989, 8-30G might have been stopped before becoming the scourge of neighborhoods and communities across Connecticut. Now is the time to stop work, live, ride, and fair share legislation. Once that genie is out of the bottle, it will do irreparable damage and be impossible to put back in the bottle. To stay abreast of the never-ending march of anti-zoning proposals in Hartford, to know how and when to let your voice be heard, go to CT169Strong.org. Please note the red button in the upper right-hand corner for a link to the donations page. Every dollar goes directly to saving neighborhoods from Hartford overreach. Thank you.